Epstein repeatedly sought a meeting or back-channel communications with President Vladimir Putin, at times suggesting he had advice or insight to offer about dealing with Donald Trump.
There were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason.
I also met Jeffrey Epstein exactly one time.
Did you?
I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. I had nightmares about it afterward.
Doesn't help when you have this email, June 2013, from Epstein to bin Sulayem. All I know for sure is that you're one of my most trusted friends in every sense of the word. You have never let me down, not once, not half of once, and I greatly appreciate the time we spend together.
It's factually true that I was only at dinners. I never went to the island. I never met any women. And so, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
Imagine for a second that you're looking at a mountain of 3 million documents. It sounds like a boring legal nightmare until you realize that within those pages are the names of some of the most powerful people on the planet, all tied to one man who shouldn't have even been in the same room as them. For years, the official story was that Jeffrey Epstein was just a wealthy financier who made some terrible mistakes. But as the layers finally start to peel back, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. This is the man who headed Dubai Ports World, a company that literally controls the flow of global trade. In June 2013, Epstein sent him an email calling him his most trusted friend and thanking him for never letting him down.
Got to talk about Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, okay? Resigned as CEO of DP World. This is Dubai's largest port operator. Doesn't help when you have this email, June 2013, from Epstein to bin Sulayem. All I know for sure is that you're one of my most trusted friends in every sense of the word. You have never let me down, not once, not half of once, and I greatly appreciate the time we spend together. This was the response. Thank you, my friend. I am off the sample, a fresh 100% female Russian at my yacht. Epstein responds, 100% Russian or 100% female? Question, if it were once a man and now has, describes women's private parts, what percentage is it? And bin Sulayem responds, 100% female. Yeah, the messages between the two discuss women, girls, sexually explicit content, business dealings for sure, meetings with world leaders, yeah, and then the torture video. Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. Epstein apparently sent that message in April 2009 to a redacted name, but then you had Representative Thomas Massie, who's been all over this, revealed that this was sent to assault him.
The Department of Justice claimed they were redacting these files to protect the victims, which sounds noble on the surface. But that excuse started to fall apart when Representative Thomas Massie and Rokana actually went down to the DOJ to see the raw data for themselves. They spent just 2 hours in a room, and in that tiny window of time, they realized that the DOJ had accidentally blacked out the names of 6 of the wealthiest and most influential men connected to the case.
Congressman Massie and I went to the Department of Justice to read the unredacted Epstein files. We spent about 2 hours there, and we learned that 70 to 80% of the files are still redacted. In fact, there were 6 wealthy, powerful men that the DOJ hid for no apparent reason. When Congressman Massie and I pointed this out to the Department of Justice, they acknowledged their mistake, and now they have revealed the identity of these 6 powerful men. These men are Salvatore Navora, Zorab Mikoladze, Leopig Leonor, Nicola Caputa, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, CEO of Dubai Ports World, and billionaire businessman Leslie Wexner, who was labeled as a co-conspirator by the FBI. Now, my question is, why did it take Thomas Massie and me going to the Justice Department to get these 6 men's identities to become public? And if we found 6 men that they were hiding in 2 hours, imagine how many men they are covering up for in those 3 million files.
While the American public was focused on the domestic side of this scandal, Epstein was busy playing a much more dangerous game on the global stage. The latest documents show that the Department of Justice files mention Russia thousands of times, and Vladimir Putin himself is mentioned over 1,000 times. This wasn't just about social circles. Epstein was repeatedly seeking back-channel communications with the Kremlin. He wasn't just a guy with a plane. He was positioning himself as a shadow diplomat who claimed to have advice or insight on how the Russian government should deal with Donald Trump. Records show he made multiple trips to Russia, obtained business visas with ease, and even had scouts on the ground recruiting young Russian women for his operations.
What is going on here? New documents show Justice Department documents mention Russia thousands of times, Vladimir Putin over 1,000 times, reflecting extensive Russia-related communications and contacts in Epstein's network. Emails, travel records indicate, so there's real something to it. Epstein made multiple trips to Russia, obtained business visas, had scouts there recruiting young Russian women for him, of course. Similar to his operations elsewhere, the files describe Epstein cultivating ties with Russian political and business elites, acting as a facilitator in deals and introductions, not just sexual encounters. Epstein repeatedly sought a meeting or back-channel communications with President Vladimir Putin, at times suggesting he had advice or insight to offer about dealing with Donald Trump. He had documented ties to at least one former Russian official with a background in the FSB, whom he used to gather information on a woman he claimed was trying to extort his business partners.
If you think the influence ended at the water's edge, you haven't seen the texts from the halls of the U.S. Congress. During the 2019 hearing where Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former lawyer, was testifying, something incredible was happening behind the scenes. Congressional delegate Stacey Plaskett was sitting on that panel, questioning Cohen in front of the world. At the exact same time, she was receiving real-time instructions via text message from Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein was texting with congressional delegate Stacey Plaskett while she was sitting in a congressional hearing with President Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen in 2019.
Did they reach out to you to talk with you about these payments?
No, ma'am.
And documents recently released by the House Oversight Committee now show that Plaskett, a delegate of the Virgin Islands, and Epstein, a resident of the Virgin Islands, were coordinating in real time Plaskett's questioning of Trump's former fixer during the hearing.
At 2:24 p.m., Epstein texts, Cohen brought up Rona, keeper of the secrets. Plaskett responds, Rona? Quick, I'm up next. Is that an acronym? Epstein replies, that's his assistant. About 7 minutes later, Plaskett asked Cohen about Trump's assistant.
Is Miss Rona, what is Miss Rona's position?
Rona Graff is Mr. Trump's executive assistant.
And would she be able to corroborate many of the statements that you've made here?
Yes, her office is directly next to his, and she's involved in a lot that went on.
Though her name was redacted in the documents, the Washington Post first reported that the timestamps line up with Plaskett's questioning in the hearing.
Plaskett, who was a non-voting delegate, faced a vote to censure her after the text came to light, but it ultimately failed. Plaskett has defended her text with Epstein, saying that she took texts and calls from many of her constituents.
I've been a prosecutor for many years. I believe that Jeffrey Epstein had information, and I was going to get information to get at the truth. Having a friendship with him is not something that I would deem to have.
Then there's the nerd fishing tactic, which is perhaps the most brilliant and terrifying part of his entire operation. Epstein knew that if he wanted true power, he didn't just need politicians. He needed the smartest people in the room. He targeted intellectuals, mathematicians, and scientists like Eric Weinstein and Lawrence Krauss.
Let me just get real and say,
if I gun to your head, what do you think your best assessment of what Epstein, who was Epstein, who was he working for?
Well, I don't know, right? So I'm just guessing. Everybody wants to say he was working for the Mossad. He very well could have been. He could have been working for the CIA. He could have been a guy who was on his own, but also working with them, right? Like a guy that they used, but they never fully endorsed.
Like an asset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a guy who could move money around.
Right.
He definitely...
Good at laundering money.
The moving money around stuff was very weird because he had money through no way that anybody could ever explain. Yeah. He had an enormous amount of money through no way that nobody could ever explain. Which, you know, if you're state funded, you're funded by Israel and Israel's funded by America, and, you know, there's also NGOs and nonprofits, and there's ways to move money around where you can give this guy money.
Yeah.
So he was like Weinstein, who is an economist, right? Weinstein's a legitimate mathematician.
Eric?
Yeah. So when Eric met him, his first inclination was he was a fraud.
He's a construct.
Yeah, a construct. And did he tell you the whole story about the girl sitting on his lap?
Yep.
So Epstein, while he's meeting with Eric Weinstein for the first time, has a beautiful girl sitting on his lap, and a woman, I shouldn't say girl. He said she was like in her 20s, and she's sitting on his lap, and he's bouncing around, so her tits are juggling around.
While he's asking math questions.
Yeah, talking serious. So he was obviously nerd fishing. He was fishing for nerds, and I think he caught a lot of nerds in that net. There's a lot of those
100%.
guys that wound up going to that island. They probably thought, this is great. We get to party.
This is where names like Bill Gates come into the picture. One of the more shocking rumors circulating in the files involves an email where Epstein claimed he helped Gates deal with the consequences of seeing Russian girls, and even hinted at a situation where Gates needed antibiotics for a specific gift.
I also met Jeffrey Epstein exactly one time.
Did you?
Yes, because I wanted to see who this man was. And I regretted it from the second I stepped in the door. He was abhorrent. He was evil personified. I had nightmares about it afterwards. So, you know, my heart breaks for these young women because that's how I felt. And here I'm an older woman. My God, I feel terrible for those young women. It was awful.
Just seen this interview with Bill Gates on Channel 9.
It's factually true that I was only at dinners. You know, I never went to the island. I never met any women. And so, you know, the more that comes out, the more clear it'll be that although the time was a mistake, it had nothing to do with that kind of behavior.
There we go. I never met any women. Wow, this is getting curiouser and curiouser, Esther.
Yes, it is. And unfortunately for Bill Gates, now he has to probably deal with the insinuation, at least for many people, that Melinda chose to divorce him and get herself out of that world. Also because of his association or his tenuous links, which he denies, with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, the allegation that he presumably got an STD from a Russian prostitute that was associated with Jeffrey Epstein was actually written in a note by Jeffrey Epstein to himself. So it wasn't actually a form of correspondence. So there are allegations that he wrote that for the purposes of explicit blackmailing, which again will become clearer later on down the line. But obviously the damage is already done. I mean, it's just a terrible, terrible story.
Where what used to be called conspiracy theories are being proven true in real time by the government's own documents. The rabbit hole doesn't have a bottom because it goes straight to the center of how power is brokered in the modern age. The real question isn't who is on the list, it's who is the Epstein of today that we haven't heard of yet. Because as long as this sticky layer of fixers exists, the cycle of compromise and control will just keep spinning. If you think this story is over, you're not paying attention to the redacted lines. The most important parts of the story are the ones they're still too afraid to let us read.